All right, I am just babbling away and talking about some of the basics of breeding snakes. So in this case, I'm actually looking at a tropical colubrid. These are Boega. These are mangrove snakes. And contrary to what people think about mangrove snakes, I actually find them to be wonderful captives, tractable, very interesting. But like anything, you know, we need to manage the temperatures, humidity cycles, light cycles, and food. And these are, they eat a lot. They have a fast metabolism. They also potentially can grow faster. And but these seem to do really well when we're breeding them and we give them a specific cooling time. And so probably fall, winter, and spring in New England with, you know, I have a window fan right there. Today's a little bit humid outside and it's kind of probably, it's like 50 degrees and the humidity's up. But some of these things will be really good triggers. And this is a nighttime breeder generally. So this is a male. And you notice, I mean, I don't know if you can tell, he's not exceptionally fat. So if we look at him versus this girl, she's heavier bodied, and that's actually because she actually has some food in her from right now. And he's all, what are you doing? Hi, buddy. I love Boega. I just make friends with them. You're very, very cool. So possibly tonight breeding, but I do have a problem with this. So this is actually, these are Boega gemicincta, and my gemicincta are, you know, I'm not an expert on albino gemicincta, but what I've learned is when I breed this visual albino to my girls, I'm not getting good eggs, to the point where all I do is make bad eggs, and I've kind of like lost all hope. So what I need to do, and I'm doing it right now, is I'm acclimating some wild gemicincta. So what I'd want to do is, I think what's happening is these are too closely related, and sometimes it's not a problem. That's called line breeding. So we're breeding one animal to a wild type, and if that gene is inheritable, the offspring in the case of Boega will be recessive. So albinism is recessive. So if I breed, this is the wild type gemicincta, and that's albinism. So that's T negative albino. When the original animal is bred to a wild type, the resulting babies are heterozygous. So they carry the gene for albinism, although they look normal. They look wild type because the wild type is dominant to this recessive gene. Well, in this case, all the albinism, they might have been too inbred, or sometimes species will tolerate inbreeding, but I guess in some rare cases, they won't. So when I breed this little cute guy to her, I get nothing but bad eggs. And then I think, well, maybe I've done something wrong. Maybe my temperatures are wrong. So it's also trial and error. So I'm going to continue to do some of this, but put this in here. So here we have a nest box. So sometimes it's a really good idea to give the female a nesting scenario, which actually will help potentially with follicular growth and whatnot. So in this case, there's a female right in there, and there's a little male. So this is wild type to wild type, but both these animals are heterozygous. And this is an animal I've been raising up. I don't know, will he succeed and save me to get better eggs? To this point, no, it hasn't happened. So let's go look at another one. So here we have divergens. And I generally expect these guys to start breeding at night when I do introductions. So one thing that's really cool I noticed with Boega, sometimes when they breed, you'll start hearing the tails rattling. And when they're breeding, they start doing that. So that's like, sometimes you just go into the room, you start hearing that, and that's a really good indicator that they're actually breeding. So that's that's cool. What can we show you? Let's go to this. Okay, so now we're looking at boas. Sometimes boas, we can initiate more breeding behavior by doubling up sometimes the male, sometimes females. Because if the females are triggering the male to court and everything, a lot of times they're putting out a hormone. So they're showing that they are receptive. And sometimes maybe one female with another female is going to do more to initiate that male. The male in this case is this is albino blood. And then we have a lipstick call albino leopard. And then we have a call leopard. There might be Molly in there too. But something like that scenario. And what triggers boas really is light cycles, reducing down to even be 8 hours of daylight. And then the rest is nighttime, dropping their temperatures down to about 75. Spritzing these guys with water is a really good idea to do things. And some of those things collectively can initiate reproductive behavior. The trick is when you're breeding a lot of this stuff, don't get them too warm too much. So you give them a definitive night where it's cooling, and then the daytime, kind of put them down the lower end of their preferred temperatures. Because if we actually bring them right up to, let's say, 88 degrees, like a summertime temperature, a lot of times that is not conducive for follicular growth. We'll go over some ball python, or hopefully if I lead this video, I'm going to start with ball pythons, and we're going to talk a bit about temps. But it's really, it's paramount. You must pay attention to your temp cycles. So this is a pair of king cobras breeding, and something like this species, age has a lot to do with it on females and luteinizing hormones. So an immature female, so a young female, let's say if we look at reticulated pythons, they must be 3 to 4 years at minimum with proper food before they can even become reproductive. So they can still create follicles, but they do not release or elevate luteinizing hormones, which triggers ovulation, until they have some age. Sorry about all the noise. But so this is essentially, I look at king cobras as colubrids. So like a big king snake kind of animal, or maybe a tropical rat snake kind of deal. But you know, obviously they're cobras. And so you have a good, this is a good copulation right here. They're dimorphic, so the male's bigger. So these are just some interesting breeding notes. Then we have a female over here where we've given her a nesting situation because she's very gravid. And these guys will actually create their own nest. And she'll coil around a big pile of decomposing leaf litter and organics, you know, forest floor organics. And she'll create like a deep composting pile. And within that, she's going to lay her eggs. And there she is. And Timmy's pretty excited. So this one's actually just gone. So if we look at things kind of like colubrids, so if we're looking at like mangrove snakes and tropical rat snakes, generally they'll ovulate, have a shed, and then after that shed, depending on what their core temperature is, 10, 14 days if they're really nice and warm. If they're cooler, maybe it's going to be a little bit longer after that shed, but that's the egg laying shed. Pretty cool. A lot of reflection. Hi, sweetie. But you can see how big she is. And those look like nice fertile eggs. All right, I'll continue. There you go. That's lumpy snake full of eggs. All right, Timmy, let's carefully. Oof. Yeah, you can really.
Oh my God, is she big?
Okay, sweet. Yeah, she is so uncomfortable. Wow. Like you gotta be really, really careful with her. You watch her head.
It's under the leaf litter. I don't know where it went.
All right. All right, so we're close to having, hopefully, eggs being laid. We might have missed out on the other one. So we have a camera in the cage. So she's got a nice nest right there. And we'll see what happens over here. I thought literally we had her gravid, and he's still trying to breed her. So I might have missed out on this one. Watching your snakes is a really good idea. And when I mean watching them, not interfering, like if you have some species that are really shy. If we just get into the cage and we're not quiet, sometimes we're going to lose all the behavior that we're looking for. And some of the things with pythons, in this case, we have, these are D'Albert's pythons, and they're very, very shy, and it's really hard to even observe anything. So I have all sorts of hiding fixtures, and I'll pull it out right now because I just want to see what's going on. But one of the things you're looking for sometimes is the male's cloacal spurs. And those little spurs are going to sometimes start scratching the paper. And one thing that's interesting about paper is sometimes, like an animal like this that I might not get to see a lot, I can look at the paper and I can see little blood trails. And little blood trails are often a really good indicator something's going on. The female's dragging her vent. She's laying down a scent trail. The male, and certainly with ball pythons and whatnot, all I have to do is just, if I see the trails in the paper, I'm like, okay, they bred, even though I didn't catch them breeding. That's a really good indicator. So paying attention to behaviors, because, it's a lot of times you're going to catch the snakes breeding if you are aware and you are spending a little bit of time. All right, here's a snake. This is a carpet python. So we're seeing a swelling here. She's avoiding her heat. She's been staying forward away from the heat. Sometimes she'll even go in a water dish. At this point, I don't even have a hide box in there, because what she's trying to do is she really just wants to stay cool. Feeding goes away. Once the follicles start really growing beyond, the first third of the cycle, generally feeding starts to taper off. And as they approach ovulation, all feeding will stop. And generally, not explicitly, 100% of the time, but many boas and pythons, once they ovulate, feeding goes down substantially. Pythons even more so than boas. Boas have a very long gestation, usually about 128 days from ovulation. Pythons have a shorter one, so everything is happening. So a lot of times pythons will not eat at all, and that's a really good indicator. Another thing to note is when they breed and the female is gravid, the male knows it. She's not putting out that hormone, so breeding will cease. So that's a really important note. Here's another thing. Okay, so here we go. I'm looking at a boa. This boa, I'm looking at her condition. She just responded to me as soon as I opened the drawer. Having an animal fat going into breeding is a poor decision, generally, is my opinion. And I prefer them to be, healthy, but a little bit on the thinner side. And as they're breeding, you will notice an uptick and their food desires. So keep that in your mind. But definitely fat, rotund, heavy fat cell animals don't do well because they don't generally exist in the wild like that, okay? So that's another good note to keep in your mind. All right, I guess I'm gonna stop on that one. Hi, she's asleep. Hi, baby. It's so beautiful. Yeah, all her feeding. She's a fantastic eater, and all her feeding is gone because all she wants to do is ovulate and gestate for her eggs. Hopefully they'll be good eggs. Pretty snake. All right, I just did an introduction with the Boelen's python. This is not really how I would want to go about breeding these. I'm just doing, just to see if I can catch him spurring. There he goes. So he's excited. He's been introduced with this female, and he's gonna start spurring the paper. And just kind of regard this as like him being frustrated. And what he's eventually gonna do, he's gonna go get right there. You can see it right in the middle. His spur comes down a little, right there in the middle, that little light colored thing. And he'll ultimately go line up with the female.